All right, we're diving into some pretty mysterious territory today, the Montauk Project. You
Sure.
guys have sent us a ton of articles, even some of your own research notes, so obviously you're fascinated by this one. We're talking government secrets, mind control experiments, maybe even time travel. It's the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night wondering what's really going on out there.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. I think what makes it even more interesting is that Montauk Air Force Base, the place itself, it's real. It's not just some made-up location for a sci-fi story.
Exactly. This base has a history. It was built in World War II to defend the coast. And after the war, it was used for all sorts of military purposes, including some top-secret research.
And that's where things get really interesting. The base itself is huge, almost 3,000 acres, with underground tunnels, bunkers, that kind of environment, shrouded in secrecy.
Mm,
It's practically a breeding ground for conspiracy theories.
right. Like straight out of a movie. Underground tunnels,
Yeah.
secret bunkers. It just screams hidden experiments. So what exactly are the core claims of this Montauk Project?
Well, at its heart, the Montauk Project is all about alleged government experiments. And we're talking about some truly bizarre stuff: mind control, time travel, other phenomena that sound like they belong in a science fiction novel. The supposed goal, well, to harness these extraordinary abilities for military purposes, of course.
Okay, hold on. Mind control. Now, that's where it gets really freaky. We're talking about controlling people's thoughts, their actions, emotions, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the general idea. But the details, they're often very vague and inconsistent. You'll find claims about researchers trying to, like, weaponize psychic abilities,
Mhm.
implant thoughts and emotions, even create soldiers with enhanced mental powers, almost like super soldiers.
Psychic spies. This is sounding more and more like Stranger Things every minute. But is there any evidence, like
Mhm.
anything at all, to support any of these claims?
That's where the Montauk Project gets tricky. There's no official documentation, no declassified files, no smoking gun to speak of. Most of what we know, or think we know, comes from anecdotal accounts. People claiming to have firsthand experience or, some kind of inside
So
information.
these are people saying, I was there, I saw this happen. That's pretty thin evidence, isn't it?
It is. And to make things even more complicated, a lot of these accounts, they contradict each other. For example, one account might say the experiments were all about telekinesis, while another focuses on telepathic communication. It's really hard to tell what, if any of it, is actually true.
So a lot of smoke, but not a lot of fire. But there's a reason people are drawn to these stories. What is it about the Montauk Project that captures our imagination?
Well, there's the element of mystery, the unknown, the idea that there are forces at play that are beyond our comprehension. That maybe, just maybe, the government is involved in things we can't even fathom. It's a pretty potent recipe for conspiracy theories.
You're right. It's like we can't resist a good mystery, especially one that hints at a hidden world beyond our everyday reality.
Exactly. And the Montauk Project plays on that perfectly. It takes this real location with its history of military secrecy and then adds these incredible, outlandish claims that tap into our deepest fears and fascinations.
Okay, so we've got mind control. What about time travel? That's got to be one of the wildest claims out there. Some people believe that they actually created a time tunnel at Montauk, right?
That's right. There are stories about scientists using some kind of advanced technology. Sometimes it's described as a Montauk chair to open wormholes or portals. They claim this allowed them to transport people, or even objects, through time.
Wait, hold on. Sending people back to meet dinosaurs or witness historical events. What kind of technology could possibly do that?
Well, the specifics are, as you can imagine, very hazy. But the accounts often mention using electromagnetic fields to, like, manipulate space-time. Some even bring up things like Tesla coils and scalar waves, ideas that are considered fringe science by mainstream scientists.
Fringe science. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
We're talking about ideas that are way out there, on the edge of what's considered possible.
Exactly. Fringe science often deals with concepts that haven't been scientifically proven or accepted, and sometimes they go directly against our current understanding of physics. But that doesn't stop people from exploring these ideas. And it definitely doesn't stop them from becoming fodder for conspiracy theories.
Right. And that's what makes the Montauk Project so intriguing. It blends these fringe science concepts with real-world history and alleged government involvement, creating a narrative that's both captivating and, well, kind of unsettling.
Absolutely. It speaks to a deep desire in all of us to explore the unknown, to push the boundaries of what we think is possible, even if it means venturing into the realm of the unbelievable.
So are we supposed to believe any of this?
Yeah.
Mind control, time travel, fringe science, sounds like a mix of science fiction and conspiracy theory.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The Montauk Project really thrives in the realm of speculation. There's enough out there to pique your curiosity, but not nearly enough to definitively prove or disprove anything.
So it's up to each individual to decide what they find credible.
Exactly. You have to weigh the evidence, consider the sources, and ultimately you have to come to your own conclusions.
Okay. But what about the people who claim to have firsthand knowledge of these experiments? There are people who say they were subjects, that they were subjected to horrific things.
You're talking about the Montauk Boys. They play a central role in the whole Montauk Project narrative. Their stories often involve claims of being abducted, subjected to these mind control experiments, even sent on dangerous missions through time.
Their stories are pretty disturbing. It's hard to imagine someone making that up.
It is. And that's the challenge with these kinds of accounts. It's so difficult to separate genuine trauma from fabricated stories, especially when you're dealing with something as personal and subjective as memory.
So where does that leave us? We have these incredible claims, these disturbing accounts, but very little in the way of concrete evidence.
It's like a puzzle with a lot of missing pieces. But that's what makes it so compelling, isn't it? The Montauk Project forces us to really grapple with the unknown, to question what we think is possible, and confront the limits of our own understanding.
All right, well, we've definitely covered a lot of ground here, but there's still so much more to explore.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Montauk Project. As we go deeper into this, it's clear that this goes beyond just a story. It touches on some pretty fundamental human anxieties.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about mind control and time travel. Those are concepts that really mess with your sense of reality. But let's get specific. What kind of mind control techniques are we talking about here? How are they supposedly manipulating people's minds?
Well, the details vary quite a bit, but some common threads emerge from the accounts we've looked at. One that comes up again and again is the use of electromagnetic fields to influence brain activity. The theory is that if you expose someone to certain frequencies, certain electromagnetic frequencies, you can alter their thoughts, their emotions, even their behavior.
So they're basically zapping people with EM waves to control them. That sounds a bit like science fiction, doesn't it?
It does, it really does. But there is a kernel of real science in there. Electromagnetic fields do interact with the human body, and our brains do operate on electrical impulses. The question is whether those interactions can be manipulated to the extent that Montauk proponents claim. Some accounts even describe this device called the Montauk chair, which was supposed to generate these really powerful EM fields.
The Montauk chair, that just sounds ominous. What exactly was this chair supposed to do?
Well, allegedly. This chair was used to, bombard subjects with specific electromagnetic frequencies, inducing altered states of consciousness, and potentially even implanting thoughts or suggestions. Now, of course, there's no scientific evidence to support this level of mind control through EM fields, but it's still a pretty unsettling idea.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's like tapping into that fear of losing control of your own mind, of being manipulated without even knowing it.
Exactly. It really plays on those anxieties we have about technology being used for, well, nefarious purposes. But electromagnetic fields aren't the only method mentioned in connection with the Montauk Project. There's also a lot of talk about subliminal messaging.
Subliminal messaging. Like
Ah,
those hidden messages they used to put in advertising.
well,
The ones that make you crave a certain brand of soda without even knowing why.
that's the basic idea. But in the context of the Montauk Project, the goals are much more sinister. We're talking about potentially programming assassins,
Yeah.
creating sleeper agents, even controlling entire populations through these subliminal messages embedded in images or sounds.
Wow. That's taking subliminal advertising to a whole new level.
Right. The claims go way beyond just influencing what people buy. It's about bypassing conscious thought and going straight to the subconscious, which is a pretty terrifying thought if you really think about it.
Oh, it is. It's like a violation of your free will, of your very sense of self.
Exactly. And the Montauk Project stories take this idea and run with it. They suggest that the government was looking into ways to weaponize subliminal messaging for some truly awful purposes.
So we've got EM fields, we've got subliminal messaging. What other mind-bending techniques are we talking about?
Well, some accounts talk about using psychoactive drugs and sensory deprivation to kind of break down subjects' resistance and make them more open to suggestion. And then there are claims about using hypnosis to control people's thoughts and actions.
It's like they took every mind control trope from science fiction and threw it all together. But let's move on to the time travel side of this. You mentioned that some accounts talk about scientists using a Montauk chair to create wormholes or portals for time travel. How on earth is a chair supposed to do that?
It's a bizarre image, isn't it? A chair that can transport you through time. But the chair itself is more like a symbol representing some unknown technology. As for the actual mechanics of how they supposedly did this time travel, well, that's where it gets really speculative.
So they're not just bending spoons with their minds, they're bending time and space with a chair.
Hmm.
Come on, give me some details. What kind of technology are we talking about here?
Well, some accounts describe it as a device that creates these incredibly strong electromagnetic fields, so powerful that they can actually create a rift in space-time. They often use terms like Tesla coils and scalar waves, as if that explains anything.
Tesla coils, I kind of get. Those big slashy things that shoot lightning bolts.
Yeah.
But what in the world are scalar waves?
That's where we get into fringe physics territory. Scalar waves are, well, they're a hypothetical type of electromagnetic wave. They supposedly travel faster than the speed of light and can pass through anything. Mainstream science doesn't even acknowledge that they exist, but they're a big favorite among conspiracy theorists and people who are into alternative science.
So they're using this hypothetical, superpowered energy to punch holes in reality and travel through time.
That's the basic idea. Of course, there's no real scientific basis for any of this, but it does fit the narrative of this secret government program exploring all these crazy ideas, whether it's warping space and time or manipulating the human mind. The Montauk Project pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible.
Okay, let's imagine, just for fun, that they actually did manage to pull off time travel. What were they doing with it? Were they just sightseeing in different historical periods?
Oh, it's much more than sightseeing. The accounts say they were using time travel for all sorts of things. Gathering intel on past events, observing historical figures, maybe even influencing the course of history itself.
Hold on, influencing history. Are we talking about going back in time to, like, prevent wars or assassinations? That's a lot of responsibility.
It is, and it brings up all sorts of paradoxes and ethical problems. But according to these accounts, they weren't afraid to meddle with the timeline. Some people even claim that they made contact with extraterrestrial beings through time travel.
Time-traveling aliens. Now, that's a plot twist I didn't see coming.
Right. It's like they threw everything they could into this story. Government secrets, mind control, time travel, and now aliens. It's a wild ride.
Okay, so they're traveling through time, they're meeting aliens. Anything else?
Well, some accounts say they were also trying to change the timeline, like to prevent future disasters or change what happened in the past.
So like a cosmic do-over.
Exactly. It's the ultimate power fantasy, right? To be able to rewrite history or prevent terrible things from happening. But of course, it all depends on the idea that time travel is even possible, which, as we know, is highly debatable.
Okay, so we've got the mind control, the time travel, the alleged alien encounters. But who are the people behind all of this? Here are the masterminds pulling the strings.
That's where things get even murkier. A lot of the information comes from people claiming to be victims or witnesses, like the Montauk boys we talked about. But when it comes to actually naming specific individuals or organizations, well, things get really vague.
It's like a shadow play, with figures moving behind a screen, but they never step into the light.
That's a great way to put it. There are names that pop up. Scientists, government officials, even people connected to secret societies. But figuring out their roles and motivations is a real challenge.
It's like trying to grab smoke. The harder you try to hold on, the more it slips away.
Exactly. It's a story where the bad guys are just as elusive as the science they're supposedly using.
Okay, so we have this incredibly complex, incredibly bizarre story, full of shadowy figures and mind-boggling claims. But why does it resonate with people? Why are we so drawn to these kinds of stories?
I think it speaks to this fundamental human desire to understand the unknown, to solve mysteries, to believe that there's more to reality than what we see on the surface.
It's like we can't resist a good conspiracy theory.
Right. Conspiracy theories often give us a sense of order and control. In a world that can feel really chaotic and unpredictable, they provide a framework for understanding things that might seem random or meaningless otherwise.
And the Montauk Project. It really is the ultimate conspiracy theory. It mixes science fiction, government intrigue, and paranormal stuff into this narrative that's both captivating and unsettling.
Absolutely. It lets us explore the darker side of human nature and the potential for people in power to abuse that power, all wrapped up in a thrilling story about secret experiments and hidden truths.
It's a story that makes you question everything. The nature of reality, the limits of science, the lengths that people in power will go to get what they want.
Exactly. And I think that's why it continues to fascinate us. Even decades after the supposed events took place, it forces us to confront this uncomfortable possibility that maybe there are things out there that we just can't explain, forces beyond our control, and secrets that are just out of our reach.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here,
Eh.
but this is definitely a conversation we need to continue. There's still so much more to unpack. The impact of the Montauk Project on pop culture, the search for evidence, and the fact that these conspiracy theories never seem to go away. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been talking about the Montauk Project, mind control, time travel, the whole nine yards. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. But, you know, it's not just about the claims themselves. The Montauk Project, it's kind of taken on a life of its own in pop culture.
Yeah, that's right. It's become more than just a niche conspiracy theory. You see references to Montauk in movies, books, even music. How did this story become so popular?
Well, it all started back in the early 90s with a series of books, most notably The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time. These books claim to be firsthand accounts, full of these sensational stories about mind control, time travel, even encounters with beings from other dimensions.
So they took this already crazy story and cranked it up to 11.
Exactly. They really tapped into that whole cultural fascination with conspiracy theories, government secrets, and the timing was perfect. The Cold War had just ended, and people were, I think, looking for stories about shadowy government programs and hidden truths.
It's like the Montauk Project became this symbol of everything people were afraid of. Government overreach, unchecked science, that kind of thing.
That's a really good point. It definitely fed into that distrust of authority, that idea that the government is hiding things, that they're doing things that are much worse than we can imagine.
And once those books came out, the Montauk Project just blew up.
It did. It really did. It spread through word of mouth, online forums, even documentaries and TV shows. The story kind of became its own thing, changing and evolving with each retelling.
So it's not even one single story anymore. It's a whole bunch of different narratives, interpretations, even fictional stories based on it.
Exactly. It's become this cultural phenomenon, a shared mythology, and it speaks to our anxieties about technology, power, and the nature of reality itself.
Okay, so it's captured our imagination. But has it actually had any real impact on how we think? Has it changed anything beyond just giving us some spooky stories?
Well, I think it has, in a way. It's become a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the craziest ideas can gain traction if they play on our fears.
So it's a reminder to be critical, to question what we hear, and to be careful about trusting those in power.
Exactly. It emphasizes how important it is to look at things from different angles, evaluate the evidence carefully, and not just accept what we're told at face value.
It's like a cultural vaccine against misinformation and blindly believing authority figures.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that's a valuable thing to take away from this, even if the Montauk Project itself turns out to be totally made up.
Okay, so it's had an impact on pop culture
Yeah.
and maybe even on our critical thinking skills. But what about the scientific community? Has the Montauk Project had any influence there?
Well, mainstream science pretty much dismisses it as a hoax, but it has led to some interesting conversations about the potential of human consciousness and about the limits of what we currently understand about physics.
So even if scientists aren't building time machines based on the Montauk blueprints, it's at least made them think outside the box a little.
Yeah, it has. It's encouraged some researchers to look at the edges of what we know, to consider ideas that might seem crazy at first, but could actually lead to new discoveries.
So the Montauk Project, it's this wild trip through conspiracy theories, government secrets, and just mind-blowing claims. But it's also a reflection of our own anxieties, our fascination with the unknown, and how much we want to make sense of the world around us.
Exactly. And whether you buy into it or not. The Montauk Project reminds us that the truth can be weirder than fiction, and that there's still so much out there that we just don't understand about the universe and about ourselves.
Well, that's about all the time we have for our deep dive into the Montauk Project. We've covered a lot, but there's always more to explore. If you're interested in learning more, we encourage you to check out the sources you sent us, do your own research, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
As always, stay curious, keep asking questions. There's a whole world of fascinating mysteries out there just waiting to be discovered.
Thanks for listening, everybody.